In the heart of Eastern Europe, nestled deep within the Carpathian Mountains, lay the forgotten village of Dravenmoor. Surrounded by dense, ancient forests and shrouded in perpetual fog, Dravenmoor was a place few dared to venture. The village had a sinister reputation, whispered among locals in nearby towns. Some claimed it was cursed, others said demons roamed its streets at night, but few had ever returned to tell the full tale. It was the autumn of 1892 when a young scholar named Victor Stanova arrived at Dravenmoor. He had been studying folklore and ancient legends across Europe, and Dravenmoor had piqued his interest. According to the scarce records, the village had been abandoned for over a century, but the stories surrounding it were filled with accounts of demonic possessions, disappearances, and dark rituals. Driven by curiosity, Victor decided to uncover the truth. The journey through the mountains was perilous, and as Victor neared the village, the air grew colder. The trees, gnarled and twisted, seemed to close in around him, as if trying to ward off intruders. As he stepped into Dravenmoor, an eerie silence enveloped him. The village was eerily intact. Houses stood as though they had been frozen in time, but there was no sign of life. The stone-paved streets were covered in moss, and the church's steeple loomed over the village like a watchful guardian. Victor found refuge in an old inn, its windows broken, and furniture covered in thick layers of dust. That night, he heard whispers in the wind, but what truly chilled his bones was the faint sound of footsteps echoing outside his room. His heart raced, and he grabbed a lantern, rushing to the window. In the distance, a shadow moved, lingering by the church. The next morning, as Victor explored the village, he discovered strange symbols carved into the doors of the houses. They were old, pre-Christian markings that he recognized from his studies, symbols of protection against evil. But whatever they had been protecting the villagers from had not spared them. Near the church, Victor met an old man, a hermit it seemed, the only soul left in Dravenmoor. His name was Father Gregor, a former priest who had been watching over the cursed village for decades. Father Gregor warned Victor to leave immediately, telling him that the village had been cursed by the devil himself. The villagers, once devout, had turned to dark rituals during a harsh winter when famine struck. They summoned a demon to save them, but in return, the demon demanded their souls. Ignoring the priest's warning, Victor continued his exploration, determined to uncover the truth. That night, he ventured into the church. Inside, it was dark, save for a few broken stained glass windows that allowed the moonlight to seep through. At the altar, he found an old, tattered book, written in blood. The language was ancient, and as he thumbed through the pages, a sense of dread filled him. Suddenly, the temperature dropped. The shadows around him began to move, and a deep, guttural voice echoed through the church. "You should not have come." The shadows formed into a figure, a grotesque demon with burning eyes and horns that seemed to scrape the ceiling. Victor's heart pounded in his chest as the creature stepped forward. "I am Azazel," it hissed. "The villagers sought my power, and now they belong to me." Victor stumbled backward, horrified. He realized that the demon had not only claimed the souls of the villagers, but it had bound their spirits to the village itself. They were trapped, enslaved for eternity, and any who ventured into Dravenmoor would share the same fate.
Chapter 4: The Night of Terror. That night, the village came alive. Victor could hear the whispers again, but now they were louder, closer. He peered outside his window and saw figures moving in the streets. The souls of the damned, twisted and deformed, wandered aimlessly, their hollow eyes glowing faintly in the dark. Desperate for answers, Victor returned to Father Gregor, who revealed that there was a way to break the curse, but it required a great sacrifice. The demon's hold over Dravenmoor could only be severed by offering a pure soul, one untainted by the village's darkness. Victor realized the terrible truth. He would either have to sacrifice himself or find another way to confront Azazel. Armed with the priest's ancient relic, a cross imbued with holy power, Victor decided to face the demon head-on. Chapter 5: The Final Confrontation. As the fog thickened and the sky darkened, Victor made his way to the village square where Azazel awaited him. The demon towered over him, its wings spreading like a black veil over the village. The ground trembled as it spoke, mocking Victor's futile efforts. But Victor was not deterred. He brandished the Holy Cross, its light shining through the darkness. Azazel recoiled, hissing in fury, but the power of the demon was immense. With each step Victor took, the demon unleashed the souls of the villagers to attack him, their wails of despair filling the air. Summoning all his courage, Victor pressed forward, chanting the sacred words Father Gregor had taught him. The light from the cross grew brighter, and the demon howled in pain. The spirits, once bound to Azazel's will, began to break free, their forms dissolving into the night air. With one final surge of energy, Victor plunged the cross into the ground, unleashing a blinding light that engulfed the village. Azazel screamed as it was pulled back into the abyss, its grip on Dravenmoor shattered. The aftermath. When the light faded, the village of Dravenmoor was silent once more. The fog lifted, and the sun's first rays in centuries bathed the streets in warmth. The souls of the villagers were gone, finally at peace, and the curse had been broken. Victor, exhausted but alive, left Dravenmoor behind. The village would remain abandoned, a silent reminder of the dangers of tampering with dark forces. But the legend of Dravenmoor lived on, a warning to those who sought power beyond their understanding. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of the Carpathians, Azazel waited, biding its time.